Okay, this is King Charles IV of Spain. The guy in blue is his eldest son, future King Ferdinand VII. And next to him is the king's sister. And standing right in the center, looking very matronly, is the queen.
Uh-oh.
Did Goya just roast the royal family? Painted in 1800, this is one of the most quietly subversive royal portraits ever, balanced somewhere between courtly duty and Enlightenment critique. Just a year before, Goya had been appointed the first court painter, the highest-ranking painter at the Spanish court. So wouldn't he want to make a good impression with his boss and the royal family? If not at this level of idealized royal portraiture, then maybe something more conventional would have been safe. But maybe Goya was trying something different, or he was trying to paint a message about the declining monarchy. Oh, one thing to note here, that's Goya in the back, hanging out in the shadows. While Goya might have been subtle, not every artist tiptoed around their patrons. Some took the commission and still found a way to get even with patrons that they found too demanding or simply didn't like. Their payback was often clever, sometimes a little petty, but revenge, petty or not, is best served immortalized on canvas. Right? The Sistine Chapel, synonymous with Michelangelo, known for his brooding, hot-tempered personality. And let's not forget, sharp wit. So, who drew his wrath? None other than his patron, Pope Julius II. Michelangelo had no interest in painting the Sistine Chapel from the start. He was a sculptor, not a painter, so when he was told by Pope Julius that he had no choice in the matter, he sulked but began the literal, neck-breaking work. Michelangelo's relationship with Pope Julius was already fraught with tension. He had spent 8 months selecting marble for the Pope's tomb, a colossal monument planned for St. Peter's Basilica. But it was sidelined due to funding cuts and shifting priorities. Michelangelo considered this a major disappointment in his career, even though he completed a much more scaled-down version many years later. So naturally, Michelangelo had his beef. And he got even by painting the face of Pope Julius II onto the body of the prophet Zechariah and placing an angel behind him, giving the fig. The gesture is a fist with the thumb between the middle and index fingers. You can probably guess what that means. It's the old-timey way of flipping the bird. Yep, it was already an insult back then. And where was this cheeky little painting? Directly above the door through which the Pope enters the Sistine Chapel. And it was within the Pope's view from the altar. Coincidence? Probably not. Here's the first Thomas, Sir Thomas More, Lord Chancellor to King Henry VIII of England. In this painting, we see a thoughtful and composed man. He's draped in a fur-lined velvet robe that you can almost feel. The portrait exudes warmth. Even the details like More's meticulously rendered facial hair highlight the artist's technical mastery and his respect for the sitter. And then there's this Thomas, facing off the first Thomas in a stare-down across a grand fireplace at the Frick Collection in New York City. This is Thomas Cromwell, chief minister to Henry VIII and a key figure in bringing down Thomas More. A powerful statesman of his time, but the beady eyes and pursed mouth? Not exactly flattering. He looks stiff, arrogant, and maybe even a little greedy. Would you be surprised if I told you these two Thomases were painted by the same artist? Both were patrons of Hans Holbein the Younger, court painter for Henry VIII, but the portraits couldn't be more different. Holbein painted More in 1527, when More was at the peak of his influence. He'd even helped bring Holbein to England, offering him a place to stay. Cromwell's portrait came 5 years later as he rose in power, but stood firmly against everything More believed. Their feud ended with More's execution. And here's the thing, Cromwell later had Holbein paint potential brides for Henry VIII, like Anna Cleves. Henry agreed to marry her, swayed by Cromwell's praise and Holbein's flattering portrait. But in person, she didn't impress. The marriage was annulled and Cromwell lost his head. Holbein kept his job but never again landed a major royal commission. Historians today question the saint versus villain framing. But Holbein knew them both. Can we really look at these and say he didn't have an opinion? But the crown jewel of petty might just belong to James McNeill Whistler. It all started with this painting from 1865 by Whistler, Rose in Silver, the Princess from the Land of Porcelain. It depicts a Western woman in Asian-style surroundings and Asian-style clothes, a reflection of the Anglo-Japanese trend at the time. Shipping magnate Frederick Leyland had purchased this painting, but didn't love his dining room where the painting was hanging. So he asked his friend Whistler to make minor adjustments to the room while he was traveling. Well, Whistler took his task to heart. He believed the room should complement his painting and spared no expense to gild the entire room and adorn its walls and even the ceiling with peacocks. When Leyland came back and saw the gilded explosion, he was furious. He refused to pay Whistler, roughly $200,000 in today's money, and bitter words were exchanged between two former friends. Broke and feeling a little vindictive, Whistler added a parting gift to the room. Why not a mural of two giant peacocks fighting to remember the friendship? On the left is a proud Whistler peacock, and on the right is an angry Leyland standing in a pool of gold and silver coins. The title? Art and Money, or The Story of the Room. Despite the feud, Leyland paid half the fee and kept the room intact, peacocks, grudge, and all. The room has since moved across the Atlantic to the Freer Gallery in Washington, D.C., if you ever want to check it out. And speaking of murals, here's a quick one. In 1933, Diego Rivera, yes, Frida Kahlo's husband, was commissioned to paint a fresco in the lobby of the brand new Rockefeller Center. The mural, titled Man at the Crossroads, featured a worker controlling machinery surrounded by modern science and society. But after a newspaper blasted it as anti-capitalist, Rivera quietly added a portrait of Lenin as his response to his critics. When his patron, the Rockefeller family, found out, they weren't exactly thrilled. They asked Rivera to remove it. He refused. The mural was destroyed, but Rivera got the last word because he ended up recreating a bigger version in Mexico City, which is still on display today. Art for art's sake. This was a philosophy advocated by Whistler, because for most of history, art was influenced by the patron, aka people paying for the work. They dictated what they wanted, whether it was to display wealth, devotion, or how they wished to be remembered. And it wasn't until the decline of patronage and the establishment of public art markets and museums that we saw a greater emphasis on artistic independence and self-expression. So when artists fought back, it told the story not only of their frustration toward their patrons, but their desire to express themselves through art. Which brings us to the final painting. When model Jerry Hall skipped a couple of sittings for a portrait of her breastfeeding her son, Lucian Freud didn't wait around. He just swapped out her face for his male assistants. So if you ever need to burn your rich boss, maybe take a page from these artists and keep it oil on canvas. Thanks for stopping by, and see you next time.